Today's country lies on the northernmost tip of North America and is famous for its vast wilderness, maple syrup, and hockey. Get ready for our next stop around the world, Canada. My scariest encounter happened during the happiest time of the year, the holiday season. Christmas was swiftly approaching, and my stressful new job at the bank was taking a toll on my mental health, so much that I'd put off Christmas shopping and was running out of time. My best friend Amazon, that I had always depended on, wouldn't be able to ship packages until after December 25th, so I was left with no choice but to Christmas shop the old-fashioned way and browse stores in person. Luckily, I don't have a huge family, but I still needed plenty of time to shop and pick out the perfect gift for everyone. I had plenty of vacation days available, so I took a Tuesday off, as I assumed the shops would be less crowded. I decided a local shop corner would be my best option, both because of their cute gifts you wouldn't find anywhere else, and the fact that I would be supporting local businesses. To my delight, there were only a handful of cars in the lot, which were probably workers and not customers. Some time passed, and the bags of candles, snacks, and clothes left me satisfied with my trip. As I expected, there were little to no people shopping, which added to my pleasurable experience. My growling stomach motivated me to halt my shopping and make some food back at the house with the cute new mini tongs that I bought. Moments after I left the last shop, a man with very tattered clothing stopped me in my tracks halfway to my car, just 1 meter behind me. He just said, "Love." I jumped, obviously frightened by this unexpected man, and said, "Huh?" "Love, your tattoo." I awkwardly chuckled and said, "Oh, yeah." All he did was stare into my soul with his sunken eyes and straight face. How I didn't see him approaching, I don't know, but his gross appearance and firm eye contact made me feel very uneasy. Thinking about it now, it's entirely possible the man saw me walk into the store and was stalking me through the trip, waiting for me to return to my car. He could have purposely stayed hidden and acknowledged his presence, only until he was so close to me he could read my neck tattoo. His stained yellow teeth, oversized brown shirt that I assumed was once white, and frizzy hair were enough to make me slowly backpedal to my car because I didn't know what his next move would be. He finally broke his eye contact with me, but switched his gaze to my feet. Like they do in the military, the man purposely synchronized his steps with mine like we were in some march. I then knew this guy was nuts and that I needed to get to my car quickly. As we finally reached my car, I gained the courage to ask the man if he was alright, and he responded so quickly it seemed like he was anticipating my question. He said he just needed some money to catch the next bus to his girlfriend's, but his tone was very robotic, and it was very clear that his story was made up. Like, it was obvious. I told him I was sorry and that I didn't have any cash on me. What he did next is something I'll never forget. He broke his synchronized steps with me and walked to my left side towards the other direction. I thought this was the fruitful ending of our encounter until he jolted over and stood at my passenger side door. He started talking again and went on some tangent about how much this money would help him because he hasn't seen his girlfriend for weeks and other random things I really didn't care about. I found it odd that he went from mute to non-stop yapping with the snap of a finger, and I knew exactly what he was doing. The man was trying everything possible to stall and wait for me to unlock my car so he could invite himself in. My trunk is not connected to the back seats, so to test my theory, I popped the trunk open with my keys, which made an unlocking sound through the car. To my horror, the man quickly grabbed the passenger side door with his hand and of course failed to open it. He was so fast, in fact, it looked like the quick recoil you make with your hand when touching a burning hot pan, like he knew what to do, almost instinctively. I shut my trunk and sprinted back to the closest shop. As I was clearly distressed, the fragile old man who owned the place asked what was happening. I explained a man I didn't know tried getting into my car, and we both glanced through the shop's windows at the same time. Just like when I previously left, the only thing I could see was my car and the empty parking lot. Clearly a master of disguise, I didn't know if the man was still out there, so I asked the shop owner to phone the police. They arrived and took my statement, and even dusted the door handle for fingerprints, but found no match in the database. I was escorted to my car and was told I would be updated if any new leads arrived. I haven't heard back since. The Canadian wilderness is one of the most amazing things to experience on Earth. It's important to escape the rush of our fast-paced world and take time to decompress outdoors, away from everyone else. My husband, who is a hardcore introvert, is not a fan of this mindset of mine, but I still forced him to join me in an isolated cabin trip in Alberta. We were sipping on some wine one night with some neighborhood friends when the topic of cabin trips popped up. I expressed my enthusiasm about being virtually lost in the wilderness, and a couple explained how friends of theirs from secondary school owned a getaway cabin just 100 or so kilometers away, and we could ask them to stay at their place anytime. 2 months later, I happily took them up on the offer and contacted the couple with the cabin. They were graceful enough to let us stay for 3 days, no cost, and already had everything we needed, like a wood stove and pots and pans. The day of our stay arrived, and my husband and I parked our Jeep on the gravel road and loaded our bags onto the rowboat that we needed to reach our cabin across the lake. It was April at this time, so the weather was still frigid, especially in the morning. Bearing the cold was worth it though, because the morning sky gleamed a flaming orange that hypnotized me during the entire boat ride. We moored our boat and hiked a horrible hill that I swear was an 80-degree angle. As you might expect, the complaints from my tired and freezing husband were already overflowing, and he already wanted to go home. I told him to stop being a baby, and that this trip was going to be worth it in the end. Looking back, I could not have been any more wrong. When we reached the cabin on top of the hill, we walked into a beautiful place that was everything I could have dreamed of. To combat our exhaustion, we cooked our lunch and took a fat nap that unfortunately wasted most of the day. The rest of the evening was uneventful. We ate dinner, did a puzzle, and watched some TV. My husband had a great idea of doing a morning hike, this time on flatter land, to see the wilderness sunrise again. I happily agreed, and we calibrated our alarms to the early morning. Fast forward to the morning. Cups of hot tea and granola fueled our early expedition, and we set out into the darkness. We found a valley behind the cabin with a stream that connected to the lake, and thought this would be the perfect spot to lay down on the early morning grass and watch the sunrise glide over the mountains. As we lowered ourselves deeper into the valley, my husband was the first to notice a strange silence surrounding us. There weren't any birds chirping and no bugs buzzing. It was just the sound of my husband's voice. After he stopped talking, that's when the smell hit us. A mild, sweaty, dog-like stench filled the air, and I told my husband to stop farting, and he was ruining the moment. As he always does, he denied this and joked I was just smelling myself. 10 minutes later, we reached the bottom of the valley and laid a blanket down next to the crystal clear stream. As we were lying on the blanket, entranced with the sky, we suddenly heard a faint crying noise towards the tree line. This disturbance of the silence jolted me up, and that's when I saw 2 tiny grizzly cubs only 50 or so meters away from us. My throat felt like it closed, because although they are adorable, I read online that 75% of bear attacks occur when mothers are defending their cubs. I grabbed my husband's arm to show him, and he too knew about this statistic based on the look of his eyes. The cubs were just walking and seemed not to notice us. Unanimously, we decided that we had to make a run for it, so we both slowly rose up and gathered our things. I guess us standing up is what made the mother notice us, and slowly walk out of the tree line into the open valley. By then we had our things in our hands and slowly walked backwards, which was nearly impossible when going up a steep hill. The mom just kept staring at us and slowly moved closer and closer, not allowing us to escape her personal space. She had the flatland and was gaining ground on us and slowly swaying her giant head back and forth, clearly upset. That part is what made me really nervous, because I've never seen an animal act so unnatural like that before. We weren't even a quarter of the way up the mountain when she leapt across the stream and charged straight towards us in the blink of an eye. I screamed as loud as I possibly could, both out of fear and to scare her away. My husband was rummaging through his backpack and pulled out a bright orange can, bear spray. He shot the mist as far as he could for as long as he could, but the bear just kept charging. By some miracle, she eventually stopped 10 meters in front of us, but kept her terrifying stare. We again began to slowly walk backwards, making sure to not turn our backs or seem frightened. It must have only been about 3 minutes, although it felt like 3 hours, when she turned around and ran back towards her 2 cubs. This time, we felt far away enough to turn around and sprint the whole way back to the cabin. Since I'm typing this out, you can probably guess we made it back. My body has never violently shaken so hard before, and an hour must have elapsed before my husband and I could speak again. I owe him my life for packing the bear spray, because I, or we, probably would have increased that 75% statistic. Make sure you're prepared for bear country. Please note this story happened to my best friend Erica. Around 20 years ago, my friend Erica scored a babysitting job for a night while the toddler's parents went out for a nice dinner. Erica was 14 at the time, but still a very mature and responsible person, so the parents weren't worried in the slightest. She arrived at the house at 5 for a rundown of the instructions, when to put the kid to bed, what to cook for dinner, and a few other miscellaneous things. After she felt comfortable and the clock inched closer to 6, the parents left for the evening. The night started off as easy as it sounds. Erica and the kids spent the hours coloring, eating diced chicken nuggets, and watching the backyardigans. She was told the kids' bedtime was 8:30, so after the last episode was over, it was time to brush teeth, put pajamas on, and get tucked in. Erica only had 2 hours left of her night, as the parents gave her an ETA of 10:30. To pass the time and be productive, she brought her books over to catch up on schoolwork. She was so focused on her algebra homework that she didn't notice him come inside. A long, heavy creak in the hardwood floors made her freeze and unable to move any part of her body. The toddler wouldn't have been heavy enough to make the floor creak like that. Looking straight ahead at the TV to see a reflection, she could make out a tall, skinny hooded figure standing right behind her with his arms concealed in the pocket of a hoodie. She stayed in that position on the couch for a minute, with neither of them daring to make the first move. Still staring at the TV, Erica asked, "Who are you?" The man hesitated for a second and simply said, "Oh, sorry." He slowly turned around and walked towards the back door that was already opened. Reaching downwards, he put his shoes back on and left the house, even gently closing the door behind him on the way out. Erica rushed to lock the door, and while crying her eyes out, called the parents, who then called 911. She ran around every door and window in the house, ensuring they were locked, and hid in the toddler's room, who was also crying from being woken up. The police arrived and cleaned the entire house, but couldn't find anyone besides Erica and the toddler. What they did find was a large pair of muddy footprints at the doorway, and an empty glass on the dining table, which was not there when Erica arrived. This meant the man was inside the house for a while, just staring at Erica do her algebra homework from across the room, unaware of the uninvited guest. The police suspected, since the man didn't harm nor attempt to harm anyone, that he may have gotten a kick out of scaring people or sneaking around in their house. She hasn't babysat since, and I don't think I would have either.